Let me start calculating adjustments to the standard pattern. I draw a table with 8 columns. I will use the same measurements I always use for sewing corsets. You don't need any additional measurements in this case. What you need to know are bust front, under bust front, bust circumference, under bust circumference, waist circumference, stomach circumference. Make sure to record the distance from the waist in brackets. In this case, I measured the stomach circumference 9 centimeters and not 12 centimeters below the waistline. I did so because with this new pattern, it is desirable to take this measurement somewhere between the waistline and the hip line. It will help me adjust the configuration of the side seam, the front and the back of the dress. Since the distance from the waistline to the hip line is about 19 centimeters, I took the stomach circumference 9 centimeters below the waistline. Hip circumference. And again, I mark the distance from the waist in brackets. I took this measurement 19 centimeters below the waist. Bust middle. Clip 1 toward the arm side and clip 2 toward the corner. Front neck depth measured up from the bust line. Side length. Blade height back. Let me remind you that the blade height back measurement determines how tall the back of the finished garment should be. If the back of the dress surpasses your client's bottom shoulder blade line, the dress will likely be too tight, and as the result, there will be skin bulging over the back neckline. These are all the measurements required for customizing the standard dress pattern. I have taken measurements off my client and written them in the table. Column 1. The pattern measurements from column 2 were taken off the mock-up sewn after the pattern. I highly recommend you should sew your own mock-up after the standard pattern before calculating adjustments. By doing so, you will see how to align and join all pieces. Simply sew a mock-up from plain cotton fabric, put it on the dress form, and stuff all hollows with padding polyester, wadding, or bits of fabric. Then, tie cords around the major circumference lines. You can use the notches on the pattern as guidelines or position the cords the way you find appropriate. And then, you take all measurements off the mock-up the same way you would take them off your client. I have recorded these measurements in column 2. Don't worry if your values differ from mine. They are your own measurements in the end. Just make sure to take them off your client exactly the same way. I start by analyzing the 3 foundational measurements. Bust middle. This measurement will show if we need to adjust the central front piece. I can tell that the client's bust middle measurement coincides with that of the pattern, which means there is no need in adding a column for calculations related to the central front piece. If these measurements were different, I would have drawn an additional bust middle column and accounted for the difference in all subsequent calculations. Please remember that the bust middle measurement is not taken the same way in corset garments as in casual garments. This measurement indicates the position of the front princess seams on the ready garment and depends on your client's figure. You need to look at her and decide it together where to place these front princess seams. The distance between the front princess seams at the level of the bust line will be your bust middle measurement. Bust front and under bust front. These measurements indicate the configuration of the side seam line on the pattern, customized after client's measurements. Let us determine the configuration of the front side seam line. All calculated values are written in column 3. Bust front measurement is 46 centimeters on the client and 48 centimeters on the pattern. 46 centimeters minus 48 centimeters equals -2 centimeters. The pattern is 2 centimeters larger than needed. I divide the value in half because there are 2 side seams. As the result, I need to remove 1 centimeter from either side of the pattern. Under bust front is 40 centimeters on the client and 38 centimeters on the pattern. 40 centimeters minus 38 centimeters equals 2 centimeters. This time, the pattern is 2 centimeters smaller than it should be. I divide the value in half. As the result, I need to widen the pattern by 1 centimeter from either side. As you can see, I got 2 absolutely opposite results from the first 2 measurements, -1 centimeter and +1 centimeter. I will know how to change the front side seam line of the standard pattern after analyzing the rest of the measurements. Most measurements of the standard pattern are larger than the ones taken off the client. The only exception is the under bust circumference. The measurements coincide. It makes sense in this case to shift the entire side seam line of the standard pattern inwards by a fixed value. For example, 1 centimeter. I write the pre-estimated adjustment value of -1 centimeter into column 3. I will define precise adjustments to the front side seam line in further calculations. And now, let us continue calculating adjustments to the configuration of the front side seam line. Bust middle. The measurements coincide and I write 0 in the table. Clips 1 and 2. In this case, the measurement is taken from the bust apex point to the arm's eye, clip 1, and from the bust apex point up along the princess seam, clip 2. The second clip measurement roughly determines the length of the cup. Clip 1 measurements coincide and I write a 0 in the table. Clip 2 is 6 centimeters on the client and 8.5 centimeters on the pattern. 6 centimeters minus 8.5 centimeters equals -2.5 centimeters. The cup is 2.5 centimeters taller than needed. I write -2.5 centimeters in the table. Front neck depth, taken from the bust line. It is 5 centimeters on the client and 7.5 centimeters on the pattern. 5 centimeters minus 7.5 centimeters equals -2.5 centimeters. The front neck depth is 2.5 centimeters larger than needed. I write -2.5 centimeters in the table. Side length is 19 centimeters on the client and 20 centimeters on the pattern. 19 centimeters minus 20 centimeters equals -1 centimeter. The side length measurement is 1 centimeter bigger than needed. I write the pre-estimated value of -1 centimeter in the table. I will double check it when building the pattern. Blade height back is 20 centimeters on the client and 18 centimeters on the pattern. 20 centimeters minus 18 centimeters equals 2 centimeters. Since the blade height back measurement is 2 centimeters smaller on the pattern than on the client, there is no risk of skin bulging over the back neckline. No changes needed. I write dashes in the table. I will calculate the final adjustments to the front side seam line after calculating all adjustments to the back side seam line. I move on to the back side seam line. First, I will calculate pre-estimated adjustment values and write them in column 5. The bust front and under bust front measurements are not involved in these calculations. I write dashes in the table. Bust circumference is 86 centimeters on the client and 92 centimeters on the pattern. But I have already adjusted the pattern down by 1 centimeter from either side, i.e. a total of 2 centimeters. 92 centimeters minus 2 centimeters equals 90 centimeters. 86 centimeters minus 90 centimeters equals negative 4 centimeters. I divide the value in half. As a result, I need to narrow the back by 2 centimeters from either side. I write negative 2 in the table. Under bust circumference is 78 centimeters on the client and 78 centimeters on the pattern. But I have already adjusted the pattern down by 1 centimeter from either side, i.e. a total of 2 centimeters. 78 centimeters minus 2 centimeters equals 76 centimeters. 78 centimeters minus 76 centimeters equals 2 centimeters. Again, I divide it in half. As the result, I need to widen the pattern by 1 centimeter from either side. I write 1 centimeter in the table. Waist circumference is 68 centimeters on the client and 72 centimeters on the pattern. But I have already adjusted the pattern down by 1 centimeter from either side, i.e. a total of 2 centimeters. 72 centimeters minus 2 centimeters equals 70 centimeters. 68 centimeters minus 70 centimeters equals negative 2 centimeters. I divide it in half. As the result, I need to remove 1 centimeter from either side of the pattern. I write negative 1 centimeter in the table. Stomach circumference is 80 centimeters on the client and it is 88 centimeters on the pattern. I have already adjusted the pattern down by 1 centimeter from either side, i.e. a total of 2 centimeters. Therefore, 88 centimeters minus 2 centimeters equals 86 centimeters. 80 centimeters minus 86 centimeters equals negative 6 centimeters. I divide the value in half. As the result, I need to remove 3 centimeters from either side of the pattern. I write negative 3 centimeters in the table. Hip circumference is 98 centimeters on the client and 100 centimeters on the pattern. But I have already adjusted the pattern down by 1 centimeter from either side, i.e. a total of 2 centimeters. 100 centimeters minus 2 centimeters equals 98 centimeters. 98 centimeters minus 98 centimeters equals 0 centimeters. It follows that the pattern meets my client's measurement in the hips. I write a 0 in the table. Bust middle, clip, front neck depth, and blade height back are not involved in the calculations of the back side seam line. I write dashes in the table. The pre-estimated adjustments to the side length measurement stays the same. I write -1 centimeter in the table. Judging by the values in the side seam back column, the back side seam line resembles a zigzag. I have to apply alterations to the front and the back princess seams to even out the side seam line. There is a significant difference, though, between my new pattern and the classic corset pattern I used before, where the front and back princess seams were straight and ran from the top all the way down to the bottom. With the old pattern, I could adjust the front princess seams only in the waist, stomach, and hips, and the back princess seams along their full length, i.e. in the bust, under the bust, in the waist, stomach, and hips. The situation becomes somewhat different with the new pattern. The princess seams between the intermediate front pieces and the side front pieces allow for adjustments at the level of the under bust line, the waistline, and the stomach line. I cannot change anything at the hip line level, though, because it is exactly where the front princess seams acquire their semicircle shape. It is where they meet the intermediate front princess seams. I can't change anything at the hip line level because, if I do, I will have to change the configuration of the entire pattern and the shape of the princess seams. The same thing happens with the back half of the dress. I can't apply any adjustments at the hip line level because it is where the back princess seams stop. Therefore, I can only apply adjustments to the back princess seams along the bust line, the under bust line, the waistline, and the stomach line. The main conclusion is neither front nor back princess seams must be changed at the hip line level. There are no adjustments to the back side seam line at the hip line level in this particular case. I have put a 0 in the table, but I do need to choose a fixed value for adjusting the entire back side seam line. Let's return to the hip line. I have shifted the front side seam line 1 centimeter inwards. This implies no adjustments to the back side seam line. Both side seam lines need to have the same incline, though. Considering that the princess seams must stay unchanged at the hip line level, I have decided to split the adjustment to the front side seam line into 2 equal adjustments, i.e., shift both the front side seam line and the back side seam line 0.5 centimeters inwards. I write -0.5 centimeters under side seam front adjusted and side seam back adjusted, columns 4 and 5. It is not enough to shift the entire back side seam line 0.5 centimeters inwards, though, because it requires a lot more considerable alterations according to the calculations. We should also remember that the side seam lines must have the same incline. I have decided to adopt a fixed value of -1 centimeter for adjusting both side seam lines, front and back. The only exception is the hip line level, where I can leave it at -0.5 centimeters. In this case, both side seam lines will have the same configuration. And now I need to apply the changes to the front and the back princess seams to adjust the size of the pattern with respect to my client's size. I start from the bust line. During calculations, I must also remember to account for bust front and under bust front adjustments to determine whether I need to apply changes to the intermediate princess seam lines at the front and the back of the dress, or solely at the back. Back to the bust line. It is 86 centimeters on the client and 92 centimeters on the pattern. I have, however, already adjusted the pattern down by shifting the front side seam line 1 centimeter inwards from either side, i.e. a total of 2 centimeters. Column 3, line 1. And by doing the same with the adjusted back side seam line, column 4, line 3. In other words, I have adjusted the pattern down by 4 centimeters. 92 centimeters minus 4 centimeters equals 88 centimeters. 86 centimeters minus 88 centimeters equals -2 centimeters. As you can see, I need to adjust it down by another 2 centimeters by applying changes to the princess seams at the front and at the back of the dress. I have already removed 1 centimeter from the bust front measurement at the bust line level to even out the side seam lines of the front and the back half of the dress. So I will remove this excess 2 centimeters using only the back princess seams, i.e. without touching the front princess seams. There are 2 princess seams and therefore 4 raw edges at the back of the dress. -2 centimeters divided by 4 equals -0.5 centimeters. I need to shift the back princess seams 0.5 centimeters inwards at the bust line level. I write 0 and -0.5 in the table, columns 7 and 8, line 3. Let's move to the under bust line. The under bust front is 78 centimeters on the client and 72 centimeters on the pattern. I should have shifted the front side seam line 1 centimeter outwards from either side at the under bust line level, column 3, line 2, to get it aligned with the back side seam line. And I have done just the opposite. Shifted it 1 centimeter inwards from either side, column 4, line 4. It means I need to shift the intermediate front princess seams outwards by a total of 2 centimeters distributed between their 4 raw edges. -2 centimeters divided by 4 equals -0.5 centimeters. Now I need to calculate necessary adjustments to the back princess seams to bring the pattern measurement up to my client's measurement, 78 centimeters. The standard pattern has been adjusted down. The front side seam line has been shifted 1 centimeter inwards from either side, 2 centimeters total. And the same thing has been done to the back side seam line. I have added 2 centimeters using the intermediate front princess seams though. 78 centimeters minus 2 centimeters minus 2 centimeters plus 2 centimeters equals 76 centimeters. 78 centimeters minus 76 centimeters equals 2 centimeters. As you can see, I need to add 2 centimeters to the standard pattern using the back princess seams. 2 centimeters divided by 4 equals 0.5 centimeters. I need to shift the front and the back princess seams 0.5 centimeters outwards at the under bust level. I write it in the table, columns 7 and 8, line 4. Waistline. It is 68 centimeters on the client and 72 centimeters on the pattern. The standard pattern has been adjusted down. The front side seam line has been shifted 1 centimeter inwards from either side, 2 centimeters total. And the same thing has been done to the back side seam line. In other words, I have made it 4 centimeters smaller. 72 centimeters minus 4 centimeters equals 68 centimeters. 68 centimeters minus 68 centimeters equals 0 centimeters. I have already arrived at my client's measurement, so I don't need to remove anything in the front or back princess seams here. I put a 0 in line 5 of columns 7 and 8. Let's move to the stomach line. My client's measurement is 80 centimeters, and it is 88 centimeters on the pattern. Again, the standard pattern has been adjusted down by a total of 4 centimeters. The front side seam line has been shifted 1 centimeter inwards from either side, 2 centimeters total. And the same thing has been done to the back side seam line. 88 centimeters minus 4 centimeters equals 84 centimeters. 80 centimeters minus 84 centimeters equals negative 4 centimeters. As you can see, I need to remove another 4 centimeters by applying changes to the princess seam lines at the front and at the back of the dress. If I want to do it using the intermediate front and back princess seams, then I am supposed to divide 4 centimeters between the 8 raw edges and shift each princess seam line 0.5 centimeters inwards. Negative 4 centimeters divided by 8 equals negative 0.5 centimeters. In this case, though, the back princess seams will blend way too abruptly in the area between the waistline and the stomach line, which may result in a poor fit of the dress. I will use both the main and the intermediate princess seams on the front half of the dress alongside the back princess seams to solve this problem. This way, I can distribute the total value of 4 centimeters between 12 raw edges. Negative 4 centimeters divided by 12 equals negative 0.3 centimeters. This will reduce the bend of the back princess seam in the area between the waistline and the stomach line considerably. I write negative 0.3 centimeters in the table, columns 7 and 8, line 6. And make a note to remember that I am supposed to shift both princess seams at the front. I am not allowed to change the princess seams at the hip line level. I will put a 0 in line 7 of columns 7 and 8. That's it! We are done with the calculations. I highly recommend you double-check all calculated values before altering your paper pattern. Simply sum up all adjustment values along each circumference line and add the total to the pattern measurement. The result is supposed to equal your client's measurement. Moreover, I recommend you print out 2 sets of patterns and apply adjustments to one of them. First, sew a mock-up based on the standard pattern, and then sew another mock-up based on the adjusted pattern. Put it on the dress form and measure it. It will help you avoid many mistakes. Every new pattern that lands in your hands requires that you try it out, true it, and polish it up. Do not start cutting fabric, especially an expensive kind, unless you are absolutely confident in your pattern. It is why I insist on sewing a mock-up after customizing the pattern.